Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth, and fancy seeing you here in June. A very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. Welcome back to Big Mouth, and you can keep this conversation going over on my Twitter at Movies TV Mad. So give me a follow over there. So we're going to be discussing two separate things that I think are connected with the Hollywood problem, especially this year. Been an awful year for them because if you're going to go woke, you're going to go broke. First of all, we're going to be reading an article from Forbes by our favourite SJW, Scott Mendelson. And then we go to a Screen Rant article where Bob Iger tries to convince us that less Star Wars is more. Let's go! Yes, SJW, Scott Mendelson, believes he knows the answer to the reason why Terminator Dark Fate is going to lose $120 million. I think we all know that, but these are not the reasons. The reasons we think that we know are not the reasons Scott's going to come up with. Anyway, let's go. 7 reasons why Terminator Dark Fate was a box office disaster. As of this posting, the Tim Miller directed and James Cameron produced Terminator Dark Fate has earned $29 million domestic and $124 million worldwide, following a disastrous global launch. The Linda Hamilton, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mackenzie Davis, Natalia Reyes, Gabriel Luna flick was released by Paramount in North America, Fox Disney overseas. Outside of China, cost $185 million and will probably lose all parties over $100 million. They're talking about 120, by the way. It is one of those monumental, misguided pursuits that annoys me to no end. Ooh, Scott's very angry. Because it was painfully predictable and because it does real damage to the entire industry. For now, I will focus on why it was painfully predictable. So without further ado, I tell you what, Scott, it's not that this film has flopped that damages Hollywood. What damages Hollywood is the constant lack of imagination, the reboots, the relaunches, and taking existing characters and transforming them to other genders and other nationalities, instead of taking something and doing the best that you could do with it creatively. I talk all the time about the Tomb Raider trap, which is when a lousy franchise starter becomes a hit through preordained interest and hype despite being lousy. And then the superior sequel, in this case The Cradle of Life, pays the price. Think offhand, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Out of the Shadows, Addams Family Values, and relatively speaking, Ojai Origins of Evil. While Terminator Dark Fate may have been better than Terminator Salvation, I don't think it was, and Terminator Genesis, but audiences were still burned by those two. Moreover, those two were not themselves box office hits, earning $371 million in 2009 on a $200 million budget and $441 million, including a front-loaded $113 million gross from China in 2015 on a $155 million budget. Like Saw 4 paying for the mediocre Saw 5, even Dark Fate being the one you've been waiting for wasn't enough when moviegoers had already said ooh, no, twice before. No. You see what he's trying to do? He's very clever. He's trying to say it's not the woke aspect that destroyed this film. Of course it is. This isn't the movie we were waiting for. That's the point. But carry on, Scott. He's going to paint you a picture here, which is wrong, of course. I will admit not having watched the Sarah Connor Chronicles, but those who did have generally nice things to say about the 2-season Fox drama, namely that it offered decent TV-sized action spectacle while dealing with the various issues and possibilities brought about by the initial sci-fi premise. Like Star Trek, there's a case to be made that the stuff folks like about the franchise aren't exclusively the mega budget spectacle elements. Maybe like Paramount, mega budget Star Trek reboot flick, which overspent chasing Marvel-sized overseas grosses. Here we go, Marvel again. The Terminator franchise was never really meant to be a tentpole-sized action spectacle, and Terminator 2 Judgment Day, released at the prime of Schwarzenegger's stardom and unique unto itself in the summer of '91, was the exception to the rule. Point being, had Dark Fate cost 85 million, which like Gemini Man looks like it cost around 85 million, instead of 185 million, we'd be having a very different conversation. No, we won't. No, we wouldn't. It's still flopped. It would have lost less money, but it still would have flopped. Fox opened Terminator Dark Fate a week early in 12 overseas territories, which was weird, wasn't it? Critics saw and reviewed the film well in advance of its global rollout. So the word got out early that the word was fine. Look, I'm on the no side of the fence, but only just barely. I like Terminator 3, so do I, Scott. Rise of the Machines, just fine. Thank you very much. The film has its pleasures, such as strong performances, a solid dialogue-driven second act, some big, if muddled, poorly edited, action sequences, but the best Terminator movie, T2, since T2 consensus doesn't mean much when most folks hated the last two and liked or were indifferent towards Rise of the Machines. I liked Rise of the Machines. I thought it was a really good film. Considering the damage done to the franchise by the last two films and the new normal where folks no longer go to the movies, just go to the movies, Dark Fate needed to be Fury Road level good to win folks back. Yes, but to be as good as Fury Road, you have to be as good as Fury Road. Your agenda must be the content and the film. And this wasn't their agenda. That was James. From the moment James Cameron started trying to bin Wonder Woman, right, you knew what was going on. And did you know they made Mackenzie Davis go to the gym and make her body look masculine? Why? Can't feminine women fight and defend themselves? That is the most sexist thing of all. They think they're being progressive, but they're actually being sexist and insulting towards women. And they will keep on doing this. These people just don't understand. Because let me tell you something, right, before we continue with this article from Scott Mendelson. If you're a young girl and you see, a gymmed up female body, you can't aspire to that, can you? But if you see an ordinary, everyday woman who maybe is leading an ordinary life and all of a sudden she's been led into this world, then you can identify, then you can look up to her as a hero. Contrary to popular belief, Chinese moviegoers do have taste. Yes, they do. Warcraft earned 219 million in 2016 in China, but it earned 90 million of that in the first 48 hours, showing that Chinese moviegoers didn't like it any better than we did. It was their Batman v Superman, X-Men Apocalypse earned at 121 million in China, which pushed the film over 500 million and made Dark Phoenix look like a safe bet. But China can't say yeah once was enough, as well as we can. This is ridiculous. How many crappy films, how many MCU films, mediocre ones, do really well in the States and not so well in China? Please, Scott, don't tell me the American audience has better taste than the Chinese audience. You are reaching, my friend. Terminator Genisys made headlines by opening with a near record at the time 27 million opening day. But A, it was the end of the local blackout period, and B, it flamed out with 113 million. China didn't like Genisys any more than we did, and Dark Fate opened with 29 million this weekend for a likely over-under 55 million today. While the kind of movie star that puts butts in seats is in painfully short supply these days, yes, there's no movie stars anymore, that's a big problem, to where even Will Smith needs a franchise IP play. Schwarzenegger has been struggling since End of Days in 99. Well, the man's in his fucking 70s now, right? He's not relevant anymore. I was excited he was going to be in this movie, but at the end of the day, Schwarzenegger's time, if they're going to carry on this franchise, and they probably won't, has to be done because he's not helping it. It needs to move on. It needs to be in the future. It needs to be man versus machine, the rebels versus the machines. That would be awesome. But they refuse to do it. That movie, his first since his much-panned performance in Batman and Robin, and heart surgery 2 years prior, was sold as a comeback vehicle, but it underwhelmed with 211 million worldwide on a 100 million budget. Except for Terminator 3, 443 million on a 170 million budget in 2003, and Expendables 2, 340 million on a 100 million budget in 2012. Every other Schwarzenegger vehicle since Erasure has disappointed or outright bombed. Think quality, notwithstanding the 6-day collateral damage, The Last Stand, Escape Plan, Sabotage, Expendables 3 and Terminator Genisys, like a lot of 80s and 90s stars, but he's been trying to come back for longer than he was ever back. The point, as I keep on saying, Arnie had his peak. We all have peaks in life, right? And he's past his peak. So there's nothing for him to be ashamed of. He's just not the popular guy he used to be. He had a sell-by date, and that sell-by date is gone. It's not his fault this film flopped. Way before anyone had been cast in The Force Awakens, I argued J.J. Abrams and friends should use the preordained blockbuster status of Star Wars to rebut conventional wisdom about who could star in global blockbusters. Here we go. Lucasfilm gave us Star Wars trilogy starring Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, and Oscar Isaac, and The Force Awakens earned $2.068 billion worldwide. It wasn't because of the cast, mate, because of the name of Star Wars. Overseas audiences had zero issues with a big-budget sci-fi flick that didn't star a bunch of white men. Here we go. Here we go. He can't resist. He has to make it about gender and sexuality. Extremists, my friend, they're insane. Where are we? However, as we've seen in the last decade, on-screen, off-screen, inclusivity will not get audiences to see a movie for which they have no interest. No. You see, he's spinning it again. It's not that they didn't have any interest in this film. It's the fact that the actual time for this film wasn't Terminator, wasn't Schwarzenegger, wasn't Linda Hamilton. It was about being woke. It was about getting 3 women to lead this movie and to make a point of it, right? Audiences wanted to see Star Wars, so the inclusive cast was either not a deterrent or an added value element. No, it wasn't neither. We didn't care about the cast. We were just going to see the next Star Wars film. Audiences didn't care about Terminator, so what worked for Force Awakens? Right, how can you compare Star Wars with Terminator? Star Wars at that time was a very anticipated, still very popular IP. Terminator just doesn't attract that excitement. But if you dared to think outside the box, Terminator could still work as a franchise. So what worked for Force Awakens and diverse cast newbies with franchise stars, anchoring a loose remake of the most popular installment, didn't work for The Dark Fate. Audiences do not care about the Terminator franchise. You see, this is where he's going with this, because by hell, imagine if people didn't turn in because they swapped male characters for female characters, got woke, and went broke. But that's the truth. The truth Scott here doesn't want to talk about. The likely massive loss incurred by Terminator Dark Fate can be attributed to many factors, but the biggest is that audiences don't care about Terminator. I don't believe that. Make a great Terminator movie and people will turn in. The first film was a pulpy B-movie sci-fi horror flick that was small-scale hit. Judgment Day was an event unto itself, like Rambo First Blood Part 2. At least Stallone eventually stopped spending mega money on Rambo sequels, whose $520 million success did not guarantee a lifelong fandom. Rise of the Machines did fine, but Salvation and Genesis released in a world where a big-budget franchise flicks were par for the course. Proved Terminator was no longer special, and audiences didn't care that it was. Why I'm furious. Hollywood is getting hammered on all sides by a delusion of often mediocre streaming and VOD content, and their answer is offering as a prime theatrical attraction intended to be an event movie, something that audiences have specifically and explicitly rejected twice before. Let's see what he says here. I've studied the film industry So basically, right, he's saying, look, he doesn't come out and say it, but he's saying that, killing off. You see what he doesn't mention? You see, he's a number cruncher. He's talking about figures constantly, and that's great. That's his speciality. That's why we all follow him. But he is extreme left, he is an SJW, and he doesn't like it, and he is angry because a woke movie that sacrificed its male character, right, and swapped it with a female character, we all heard about it and said, guess what? We're not going to go and see this movie, right? I've seen the movie, but you get what I'm saying, right? Enough people didn't come out and see the movie because they heard it. When I heard Edward Furlong was going to be in this movie, I did a video. And you lot who have followed me for a while, who are very loyal to the channel, would have seen how excited I was. And what did they do? They kill him off immediately and swap him for a female character, putting her front and centre. This is what they're doing. It's the woke aspect. It's the SJW. It's the extreme left aspect of what they're doing to Hollywood today. This is why their movies are being damaged. And this is the core issue about Terminator Dark Fate. It's not that we're not interested in Terminator. Of course we're not as interested in Terminator as we are with Star Wars, and they've destroyed our interest in that as well now. But the point is, give us a great Terminator movie, right? Like the spin they did with Joker movie. You give us a great Terminator movie, and that movie's going to make $1 billion. But all they did was woke up the agenda. Give us what we've already seen before. And that, Scott Mendelson, is why this movie has failed. One thing you'll know about Hollywood is they'll lie and lie and lie to get themselves out of any situation. And the normies out there will believe anything that Bob Iger and the Access media will tell them. But us here on YouTube can educate you to what's going on. So Disney CEO, not disappointed in Star Wars, but admits to slowdown, right? The whole thing is, he's saying that they put too much out there too soon, and that's why the IP was damaged. Of course, this is not true. It's all part of the spin to explain away what happened, so they don't admit their culpability to ruining one of the biggest IP in film history. Disney CEO Bob Iger is not disappointed with the performance of new Star Wars movies, but reiterates a release slowdown is probably the best for the franchise. After the Mouse House acquired Lucasfilm in 2012, new Star Wars content came out faster than ever before. The studio produced annual tentpoles and alternating between the numbered episodes of Skywalker Saga's sequel trilogy and standalone anthology films. They're currently gearing up for the premiere of the 5th Star Wars film in 5 years, The Rise of Skywalker. In contrast, George Lucas released 6 Star Wars movies over a 28-year period. For fans of the galaxy far, far away, having a fresh film to look forward to every year was an exciting proposition. But a case can be made. It was too much too soon. Lies, lies, lies. Even Disney will admit, rushing things out of the gate. They're not admitting it. They're using it as spin. And they're stepping on the brakes as they iron out Star Wars' future on the big screen. But while Iger knows Star Wars can't stay at its current pace, he's happy with the way things have turned out. Of course he's not happy with the way things have turned out, but he has to say that. And how he can say that with a straight face is astonishing. But these people will do anything to survive, to stay in their positions. And we know they fail upwards, not downwards. In an interview with BBC Haptic Variety, Iger of course discussed the state of Star Wars. He further elaborated on previous comments he made regarding this subject. I have not said they were disappointing in any way. I have not said that I'm disappointed in performance. I just think there's something so special about Star Wars films, and less is more. No, Bob, if you were releasing a movie every year and they were each making $2 billion, you'd still be releasing a movie every year. You are lying, and that's exactly what you said. But now you're going on another agenda. This is what you do, Bob. You're a genius, Bob. You have made Disney what it is today for acquiring Pixar, Marvel Studios, and Star Wars. But you people have no idea how to make a Star Wars film. That's the truth. That's what you should say, Bob. We just don't have a clue how to make Star Wars films. That's it. Instead of this. But of course you can't say that. Collectively, 4 Disney Star Wars films to date have bought more than $4 billion worldwide. However, Iger is likely disappointed a little bit in how Solo turned out. Though the spin-off received generally positive reviews from fans, look, Solo was an okay film, but it was a film we didn't ask for. And critics, it grossed only $392.9 million globally, becoming the franchise's first box office bomb. That development forced Lucasfilm to reevaluate their strategy a bit and led to a number of changes behind the scenes, including the planned Obi-Wan Kenobi film, which should have happened. That film should have happened straight away, and it would have turned them around, if, of course, they had the right people running it. Obi-Wan Kenobi film being repurposed into a Disney Plus miniseries. Solo appeared to be the wake-up call for Disney. that they couldn't overdo it with Star Wars films. It debuted 5 months after The Last Jedi, and they're taking the necessary steps to ensure something like that doesn't happen again. It's funny, isn't it? It really is. They're trying to convince us it's because they released too much too soon. But we know that's not the case. We know this is all down to The Last Jedi and the absolute cock-up they made by putting Rian Johnson in charge. But of course, they can never admit that, can they? They can't admit being woke sent them broke. Do you know what I mean? When it comes to Star Wars movies, Disney is definitely following the less is more mantra. They are stopping the annual releases, spacing the next 3 Star Wars films out between 22 to 2026. Well, you don't actually have a trilogy now. You've just sacked the writers, haven't you? Disney also keeping the franchise in December, where The Force Awakens, Rogue One, and The Last Jedi all found tremendous success. Solo debuted in May. They're not going to blame May for the failure of Solo, are they? This should allow each of the upcoming projects, whatever they are, to feel like the proper cinematic events I could clearly want. Given the Star Wars' immense popularity, it's tempting to keep churning out content, but taking a more measured approach is smart. It's not smart, it's spin. The gaps between the films will give people time to miss Star Wars. Well, we haven't had a Star Wars film for a while, and the negativity for the build-up of The Rise of Skywalker is still there. We'll give people time to miss Star Wars, and there'll be plenty of hype surrounding the new releases. This is really funny. Really funny, right? Because if a franchise is at its peak, if the films are so good, you don't need to miss something, do you? I loved Smallville. Did I say, yeah. Do you know what, Al Miles and CW, I'd rather you not give me an episode a week. It's so good, I'd rather miss it. All spin. All spin. They have failed. They have absolutely failed. The Force Awakens made a hell of a lot of money. So did Rogue One. But behind the scenes, Rogue One was an absolute mess. And if Tony Gilroy didn't come in to sort it out, that would have flopped as well. The Last Jedi was the film that destroyed everything. Solo was the knock-on effect. It was the innocent victim of The Last Jedi. And now, you know, they've sacked Lord and Miller. They sacked the guy who has done the Jurassic Park movies, right? And J.J. Abrams had to come back to finish a movie he didn't want to do. So it's all very uncomfortable. I don't know if they're going to stick the landing. I don't know if they're going to get away with it. I don't know if they're going to make money. All I know is that these people are full of shit. And it's really funny to see how Disney have destroyed Star Wars. It's not funny. It's funny and it's not funny. I love Star Wars. I want to see good Star Wars films. But what they have done is taken something so special and so precious to us all and put it in the toilet because they don't understand. Movies are not a place for extreme political agenda. Do you get what I mean? And this is what they've done, and this is how they're destroying their IPs. And they will continue to do this until we say enough is enough. With Solo, we said enough is enough. The question is, of course, will we say enough is enough with The Rise of Skywalker?